After you've created a test or quiz in Niihka, the next important thing is learning how to deploy it and how to set the appropriate settings for that. So what I've done here is I have a quiz already created. There's only 2 questions to it, so it's not too long, but you'll see that it's listed under pending assessments. That means it's been created, but it has not yet been released for students. So the way to deploy this, to publish it, is to click the drop-down menu and choose Publish. And what you'll see here is several different things you can do. You can send out a notification if you want to deploy it, which is just an email sent out to everybody in the course site saying this quiz is available. You can publish it without a notification, but what we do want to do is we want to make sure we have the correct settings. So we're going to click on the Edit Settings button, and you'll see there's about a dozen different categories here. So what I'm going to do is I'm actually going to click on the Open button up here, which actually opens up all of the submenus so you can see everything at one time. Under Assessment Introduction, this is what the title is going, or this is what the quiz is going to be called. So if you want to call it something different when you publish it, so your students see it as something different, you can. I created this quiz using markup text, but I don't really want my students to see that, so I'm going to call this the Unit 1 quiz. You can add a brief introduction to the quiz, which students are going to see before they start taking it. You can also add attachments that your students can see before they start taking the quiz. Under delivery dates, this is when the quiz is going to be made available to your students. So I want students to start taking it effective. Let's see here. In the date window that pops up when you click the calendar icon, I want them to be able to start taking it immediately. So you'll see it automatically enters the current timestamp, and I want them to take this within this week. So by Friday the 13th, I'm actually going to change this to say 5 o'clock p.m. is when it has to be completed by. There's also a retract date. We usually recommend that you not have a retract date in here, or if you do, have it set to be the end of the semester. The retract date allows students to submit this test or quiz beyond the due date, and while most instructors don't accept late tests or quizzes, especially in an online medium, if a student has a legitimate reason for not being able to take the quiz, such as they're in the hospital or they're out of town and you're allowing them an extension, having to go back in and reopen that test or quiz actually serves to be more harmful than keeping the retract date to be the end of the term. And so what Niihka will do is once the student takes the quiz, Niihka will notice that they took it beyond the due date, and Niihka will mark it as late but still accept it, so that when you go in to grade the quiz, you can adjust the grade however you'd like, which is much easier than having to go back in and redo all of these settings just so one student can retake the quiz. So for the retract date, I am going to set one, but I'm going to set it to be the end of the term, and I'm going to say the end of the term is August 31st. There's also the assessment released to. So by default, it's released to everybody in this course. However, if you have groups set up, which you can do through the site info tool, you will also be presented with additional radio buttons here, where you can select individual groups that can take this quiz. You can also set some additional security features, only specify certain IP addresses, or if you want there to be an additional username and password that students have to enter in order to take the quiz, you can do that here. So this would be, for example, if you were to give out the password the day before the quiz, or the day of the quiz, so that the students so that you know the students are taking the quiz at a certain point, and only certain individuals have access to that username and password. If you want this to be a timed assessment, you can set that here by clicking on the checkbox. And then under timed assessment, you can choose how long you want them to have to complete the assessment. It does say the assessment will be submitted automatically when the time is up, so even if the student hasn't completed the test, their answers will automatically be submitted and they will be locked out. Under assessment organization, this is how the assessment is going to be laid out to them. Random access to questions from a table of contents is the default for the navigation. So there will be next and previous buttons for each page so they can go back to previous questions if they want. Or you can do linear access to questions with no return to previous pages. So what this means is that if you have a test set up where you've got one question per page and they have to click next to go to the next question, they won't be allowed to hit previous to go back to the previous questions. Question layout, do you want each question to be on a separate page? If you have multiple parts, you can do one part per page, or you can do the entire assessment on one page. Any of those options are up to you. If you do set it up to be the complete assessment is on one page, then the navigation options are a moot point. Those don't really serve any purpose for you. You can also change how the assessment is numbered with the questions. You can restart numbering for each part, or you can just do continuous numbering. Continuous is the default, and there isn't really a known use case for why you'd want to renumber those. You can allow students to choose to have an add mark for review, which allows students to skip ahead to do the ones that they know, but hit the checkbox to be able to go back to that question before they submit, for them to be able to review it before they decide if that's the correct answer they want. Submissions, how many times can a student submit this quiz? The default is one time, however you can change that. And what you want to do with late handling. We mentioned earlier with the retract date being set for the end of term. In order for that to really take effect and to be useful, we do recommend that you do accept late submissions. This does apply to only students who have not submitted prior to the due date. So what that means is, for example, a student submits once before the due date, they won't be allowed to go back and resubmit after the due date. Late submissions will only be accepted for a student who hasn't yet submitted their assessment before the due date has arrived. If you want there to be a submission message or a final page URL that students are taken to once they've submitted this assessment, you can choose that here. You can also set which kind of feedback you want students to have. Oftentimes, you want students to see what they responded, what the correct response is, and any type of feedback that you have provided to them. If that's the case, then you can choose release questions and scoring. And so once you click that, you can choose any of these checkboxes. So I want students to see the here we go, feedback on submission. You have to make sure those radio buttons are clicked appropriately, or these checkboxes won't work. But I want students to see the response that they provided, what the correct response was, their overall score on the test, and question level feedback. So this is the feedback that I entered when I created the questions. So if they get question 1 wrong, they're shown the feedback based on whether or not they got that question correct. Under grading, you can set whether or not this assessment sends grades to the gradebook, and if you do so, you can click the radio button there. Niihka will automatically create a gradebook item that says Unit 1 quiz, which is what I called this quiz, and will automatically send those questions over. However, because this quiz has a short answer, it will not do that for you automatically. You will have to go in and grade that short answer question first, and then click a button, and Niihka will automatically send all of those scores over there. It will automatically grade the multiple choice questions, however, for you. If multiple submissions are allowed, which score do you want to remember? And then once you're done with those, you can hit the Save Settings and Publish, and you'll be set to go. So I'm going to choose Save Settings. I'm getting an error message because I said it was a timed assessment but didn't choose a time limit. So let me go back through here, and I want students to have, I'm going to say 30 minutes to complete this quiz. And so now you're taken back here. I can send out a notification, but I'm going to just publish it without. And so now I'm taking back here, and you'll see you have two copies of the Unit 1 quiz, one under pending and one under published. The published one is the one that students are currently taking and can currently take. The pending assessment allows you to go back in there, edit the quiz, and then republish it for another group of students. Keeping in mind that you can only have one quiz with that name at one time. So you would have to change this to say Unit 1 quiz re-release or Group A or Section A, however you want that to be listed.